Welcome to Uncovered. It's Wednesday. I'm Anthony, he's Ron, and we're about to uncover the MAGA propaganda that's not covered by the mainstream and corporate media. I'm sure you've heard me say that before, but that's basically what we do here. We do what it says on the tin, or on the can, as you Americans say. Ron, shall we start with the peace negotiations for the Iran war, which were doing really well until Monday, and then they weren't doing really well, and then something really bad happened, and now the war's back on. I'll let you take this.
Well, 38 different times Trump has posted, 38 different days, Trump has posted on True Social that a peace deal is imminent.
Yes.
That it's going to be any day, hours sometimes, hours away from.
Right.
And everyone's going to be happy, and it's going to be the greatest deal ever, and it's going to be better than Obama's. And here we are. He announced today at a press conference this afternoon that that he is going to resume bombing tonight. That yesterday, apparently, they knocked out some radars, and today they are going to hit him hard, he said. We're going to hit him hard. So it doesn't appear that any peace deal is in the works. And, you know, what I found very interesting is in the last few days, for the first time, even the most diehard MAGA Trump supporters are calling BS. You know, they're saying, wait a minute, you know, how many times are we going to hear the same thing over and over again? And it never happens. You know, I think even they're a little frustrated because they've been steadfastly defending this in the media, on TV, defending this, telling their own people who didn't really want this war either, that it was going to be quick, it was going to be easy, everything was going to be done and over with, and gas prices were going to go down. And they've now been saying this for over 3 months, and I think they're starting to hear it from their own people.
Yeah. You know, we should mention the market manipulation, because I do think this has been a big part of it. I think Trump was told early on that, you know, saying this causes his people who manage his portfolio to make a tidy profit. And I'm sure a whole lot of Republican senators and Congress people as well. How much of that do you think has to do with this? Because, I mean, I wrote a Substack about this last night that dropped this morning that basically said, you know, Trump's peace deals are entirely in his imagination. He says that Iran is desperate to make a deal. And Iran says, we don't know anything about this. We're not in negotiation. We're not having conversations. It must be a market manipulation game.
I think that that's part of it. I definitely do. But I also think that he really wants to get out of this war somehow and save face. I think that's legitimate. So I think a lot of this, when he's saying this, is typical Trump. I mean, he says this really about every subject, you know, whether it is inflation or anything to do with the economy. He's always predicting economic growth. You name it, factories being built. Everything is always just about to happen right around the corner. And this goes all the way back to the 80s. You can watch when he opened various businesses: Trump University, Trump mattresses, Trump vodka, Trump shuttle airline
steaks.
It's always the same, you know, rap. You know, everything's going to be bigger, better than ever. Same thing when he bought a professional football team before the league went out of business. It was going to be bigger than the NFL. You know, this is the way that he hypes his various products. But as far as the market manipulation, you know, one little thing you see today, a little clue, was he often hypes products that he's invested in. He's in New York Times, I know, and Wall Street Journal recently documented this in long articles showing all the times that he has announced that particular companies are doing great or red hot, or, you know, they get a government contract, and then come to find out, you know, he's invested in that company. Well, just today he put out a big hype thing about Citicorp. You know, Citicorp is hot. It's the best investment bank. And then I Googled it. It turns out, lo and behold, October 2025, Trump shifted almost all of his investment banking assets to who? To Citicorp, you know? So he's trying to manipulate, because that stock was down the last few days. So he's trying to manipulate the stock price. But
insider trading is entirely illegal, right? So at what point, because this to me all plays into the fact that this guy can never leave office because he's breaking the law left, right, and center. And there's no way you can survive on the outside of the White House without your immunity protections and everything else doing this much criminal activity. It's so blatant. He's not trying to hide it. And that, there's a slightly different conversation, but to me that all plays in to this idea that he's never planning to leave. Let's look at some of these MAGA Republicans that you say have not taken lightly to these constant announcements that a deal is just around the corner.
Is Trump helping Iran by ordering Netanyahu not to hit Hezbollah?
Yeah, I hate to depart from my president, but I agree with it. Look, I'm starting to feel like we're Charlie Brown and Iran is Lucy, and every time we go kick the ball, it's been taken away. We're close to a deal. We're 2 days from a deal. We're 3 days from a deal, and it's not happening. And so if I were in Vegas right now, I'd be betting against in 2 days. We're going to be right where we are today. I think that bad behavior deserves punishment, and unfortunately, the Iranians are exhibiting bad behavior, and they're not suffering any consequences for that. As you can tell, I'm a little bit more hawkish than the president would be.
Yeah. We're hearing this on multiple levels from multiple people now, aren't we? I mean, maybe we should just mention the war powers vote. I mean, there is a method and an opportunity to stop Trump from doing this stuff and behaving in this way. But that has not been entirely successful either.
No, it's not. And I will say, Jimenez there, he's never criticized Trump ever.
Yeah.
I mean, he never, ever goes against Trump on anything. And that's the first time I've ever heard him do that, say anything like that. So clearly, the closer that we get to the midterms, with this war going on and the gas prices remaining up, although they've come down a little, it's just, I think that these guys are getting more and more panicked and more concerned about what this war is about to do to their electoral prospects, because it overshadows everything else. Everything that they hope to talk about and sell and argue, it's hard for them to try and get people to vote against Tallarico because he is supposedly weird, or he's not masculine enough. Or Graham Plattner because of his tattoo, but it's pretty hard to do that when gas is over $4 a gallon and we're at war in the Middle East.
But the tragedy is that it's about them. They're only standing up to Trump because they might not get reelected. It's nothing to do with gas prices for the people. It's nothing to do with safety and security and national security for the people. It's just a selfish act.
That's why, like, the people who still aren't criticizing him are the ones who are like senators who are not up for re-election this year. It's the ones that are in these swing states, swing districts that are up. Those are the ones starting to gripe and complain about various things, because look, it's June 10th. We're July, August, September, October, 5 months out. That's not a long ways out from the midterm. So yeah, they're definitely getting panicked, and you're seeing that now in their comments.
Let's take a look at Jesse Waters, everybody's favorite news anchor. I say news in the loosest sense. Let's take a look.
Puts even more pressure on him and gives us more leverage in those negotiations.
Yeah, the president indicated that he does not want to resume major combat operations. He said if we did do that, you'd have the strait closed for another 2 to 3 to 4 months, and he doesn't want that. And he keeps saying we're very close. We're days away, and I don't know what that means. We've heard that for a very long time. I mean, oil has gone down. It was closed at, I think, 89 today, but gas prices are very high, and there's a lot of people in the administration, I think, that would like to see the job finish, and others think that, we're pretty close. But what do we know?
That has never stopped us.
Yeah. Too bad they demonized Tesla, Jesse.
We'll continue to...
Yeah. How you can find any of this funny, considering the ramifications for not just the people of Iran, the people of Lebanon, the people of Gulf nations that are being dragged into this, the people on the continent, continental Europe, whose gas prices are going up. I mean, the consequences of Trump's actions considering that there was a deal, despite being negotiated by Barack Hussein Obama, as he likes to remind us, that he tore up without even reading. I just would have loved someone to say, well, what was it about the deal that you didn't like? It was just the fact that it was done by a person of color who got in ahead of him. That's what all this is about.
Yeah, and the new inflation report came out today, and it was bad. Inflation was up again.
Yeah.
And Trump was asked about it in the Oval Office, and he said, oh, he doesn't care. He said, I love inflation. I mean, he just cut another ad for Democrats. He said, no, inflation is fine. I love the inflation. And he went through this tortured argument where he basically argued that, like, as soon as the war is over, all these prices for everything is going to come down so dramatically that he likes inflation being high now because it's going to make it look even more successful when he ends the war. I mean, that's his mentality. That's what he's thinking. So in other words, no recognition whatsoever about what the cost that this is imposing on the average American, on farmers, doesn't care. It's all about him. It's all about his hype and his BS. And it's just, as you're seeing from the Republicans, they understand. They're hearing from the people out there. They understand that this war is not helping them. It's not doing anything for their prospects. And Iran is certainly not going to surrender anytime soon. And by the way, whatever peace deal they do come out with, it's not going to be anything like what Trump sold the American people on as far as what this war was going to accomplish.
He posted at 7 o'clock this morning, Iran's military is a complete and total mess. Much of it, like their Navy and Air Force, doesn't even exist anymore. They've been completely defeated. Iran is all talk and no action. The bully of the Middle East is dead. They've taken too long to negotiate a deal that would have been great for them. Now they will have to pay the price. I mean, we know that we flip everything with Donald Trump. He refers to Iran as the bully. Of course, he is the bully. When he talks about the fact that their military has been devastated, it's actually the U.S. military that consistently is having problems. We should talk about this Apache helicopter that got shot down in the Strait of Hormuz. This is what caused Trump to escalate again. And the timing we'll talk about in just a second, but just tell us about the situation with the helicopter. I know that the crew were able to bail out and have survived, but still, this is not good for the might of the U.S. military, is it?
Yeah, I mean, he says in that tweet there that the Iranian military is completely wiped out. They're destroyed. They don't have any capabilities. And yet, this comes less than 48 hours after they shot down one of our helicopters with a drone.
Yeah.
And that was a $20,000 drone that shot down a $20 million helicopter and almost killed the two pilots. Very, very fortunate that the drone, apparently, according to Trump, which hit the helicopter, did not explode. It caused the crash, but it did not explode, which certainly would have killed the pilots. So the timing of this was interesting because, of course, I was following Trump going to this Knicks game, the New York Knicks game that he planned on going to. And the reports about the helicopter came out the following morning early. CENTCOM put out a statement. So we didn't know. Their initial statement did not even say it was shot down. It just said it crashed. We didn't know any details. And then a few hours later, they put out a statement saying it was shot down by a drone. And I looked at the timestamps of what they said. And you can see in the CENTCOM press release, it says that the pilots were rescued at 7:33 p.m. Eastern time on June 8th, and that they had been shot down 2 hours before that. So at 5:33, they were shot down in the water off Oman, waiting to be rescued. And they were in the water for a couple of hours until they were rescued at 7:33 by a boat. And so I looked at the timestamp for when Trump boarded the helicopter to go to Madison Square Garden from his country club in New Jersey, and that said 6:57. So what that means, Eastern time, and so what that means is that Trump knew, there's no possible way he didn't know. Trump knew that this helicopter had been shot down. he knew that the pilots were awaiting rescue, that they were in the water and had not been rescued yet. So at the time he gets in that helicopter to go to the basketball game, he did not know if those pilots were going to live, die, be captured. They weren't rescued until 36 minutes later. And yet he still went to the basketball game, which I find pretty shocking.
Should we still be shocked at this kind of stuff? I mean, we've been dealing with this shit for 10 years, Ron. You know, the fact that this guy has no empathy, he doesn't care about the military, all the lies about I built it up and Biden broke it down and I built it up again. None of this is true. The military is the military. It operates. He ain't, you know, the investment for the military is a different subject. To him, it's all about optics, and the optics he was looking for was him at the Knicks game and him kind of being a man of the people because he's going to a kind of, you know, a sporting event. That's all he cares about.
And let's not forget that Trump used to ridicule John McCain for getting shot down.
Yeah.
You know, he used to say that, you know, I like people that weren't shot down and captured.
Don't get captured, I think he said, wasn't it?
Yeah, so here you go. You know, maybe he was mad at these pilots for getting shot down and making him look bad, because that's the way he views everything.
Yeah.
You know, if they get killed, if they get captured, that's going to cause him problems, and that's his main concern. But I think that had he not gone to the game, I'm just processing the way he thinks, it might have called too much attention to these pilots getting shot down.
Right.
Because everybody would have been asking, why didn't you go to the game like you were supposed to, or why were you late? And that would have just drawn much more media attention to these pilots getting shot down, because it didn't get a whole lot of media attention.
No.
And me catching the fact that he went to the game while they were still in the water, no media has talked about that. There's been zero stories about that, even though I put it all out, all the evidence on social media. You know, no media company seems interested in that part of the story, which I find a major story. But had he not gone to the game, they all would have been forced to write a story saying why, and that would have drawn attention to it. So I think that's why Trump went.
So he goes, and then they throw his name up on the big screen. Oh, his face on the big screen, I should say. And the boos were pronounced, to say the very least. Trump has since denied that and said that people were cheering for him. Let's hear it for ourselves. You're a Marine, Ron. How do you feel when you see somebody who has never served saluting? I don't know about you, but as a like a non-military person, I always feel that it's a little sacrilegious and disingenuous. I know he's supposed to, and it's the deal, but he doesn't even know how to do it.
It's absurd. I mean, it's ridiculous. We're taught not to salute without a hat on, you know, without a cover or hat. You know, you're not supposed to salute bareheaded. That's not supposed to happen.
Yeah.
At least in the Marines, you know. But a civilian saluting, I've never seen that before. I remember that Congress or the US military, like 25 years ago, because civilians, even ex retired military and all that, were not supposed to salute if they weren't in uniform. And then I remember they passed a law. It was either Congress or Department of Defense saying that veterans could salute if they chose to. But I never did, because I thought it was a little weird for me, because it was drilled into my head, you know, if you're in uniform and you have a hat on, that's the only time you salute. Right. So it just seemed always strange for me. But they authorized military veterans to do that, whereas before it wasn't permitted. So there are a lot of rules on this stuff. So for Trump to just kind of like do his thing, and I get like presidents, I think Even Eisenhower didn't do it. I think Kennedy maybe started it. At the saluting of the going into the helicopter. Like, I get that part of it, but doing this every time the anthem is played, it's ridiculous. But
well, especially if you use bone spurs as an excuse to get you out of military service.
Especially if you dodge the draft. But, you know, you really see there in that clip, though, how this was orchestrated by the owner of the Knicks, James Dolan, who also controls Madison Square Garden, who's Trump's friend for many, many years, who invited him to sit with him at the game, because that was the only time they showed him on the big screen for the entire game. And they planned it so that they would show him right in the middle of the national anthem at a time when people are looking at the flag, putting
feeling
their hands
patriotic.
over their heart. Many of them are singing the national anthem.
Right.
I mean, if there's any time during this entire basketball game, which was over 3 hours, where they would be able to tamp down the boos,
yes,
it would be this exact moment.
Well spotted,
and that's
my friend.
how they planned it.
Well
they
spotted.
never showed him again.
Nope.
And you look how they did it. Like they had the flag, and then they put him in there, and then the boos immediately happened loud, and then they took him right off the screen and put the flag right back. He was literally only there for like 5 seconds on screen during the entire game. You know,
would you allow me to play it again?
Sure, why not?
Might play it a couple more times during the show.
So, I mean, you see how it was contrived.
Yeah,
there,
it was
too.
manipulated, and it was produced. That moment was produced, and it's very well spotted that you saw that. Now, of course, Sleepy Donald Trump did fall asleep during the game. No, we expect nothing less. Apparently, he was blinking. Shall we? Let's have a quick look at the dreams that stuff is made of. He didn't even get woken up by the stadium announcing, which is, loud and echoey. And I mean, Grandpa needs his rest, clearly.
His eyes popped open for like 1 second towards the end, when the crowd got really loud and the organ music started playing. And then they went right back to sleep. I mean, that was not late. That was like the first half of the game, and the arena was rocking. It was very, very loud, and that is while game action is going on. That's not during a TV timeout or a commercial timeout. They're actually game being played during that point in time. So you see there, it's not just him falling asleep in the Oval Office as people are talking. It's him falling asleep in the middle of a super loud arena during his first appearance at an NBA game in over 20 years. And he falls asleep at it, So, yeah, I mean, clearly there's an issue that they continue to deny. And the other funny thing is the White House putting out all these propaganda videos. They actually like altered the sound to edit out the boos and make them sound like cheers. They claimed there that he wasn't sleeping. The whole thing. It's just. It's like North Korea, the White House right now.
Right. Well, it was probably a mistake to put him in an easy chair. They should have put him in something a little less comfortable. I don't know that I would have survived.
Jared
Jared
could have had
Kushner.
a standing room only ticket like Mondami.
Exactly.
Mondami didn't even have a seat. He bought a standing room only ticket from the box office for $1,000 and was just walking around.
Good man. Jared Kushner arrived with his son, I think it was. Let's have a quick look. All the VIPs. What's the story here?
So you see there, I mean, Kushner is not a government employee, and the security lines were wrapped around the building. People had to be in line well over 2 hours before the game to have any chance to get inside. And all the TV cameras, they shut down multiple city blocks in the whole area. Restaurants were shut down, bars were shut down, vendors, parking garages, everything was shut down because people were just wrapped around the building to get through all this special security because Trump was there. And then you have Jared Kushner show up and just, I watched, there's more video where it just shows him just bypassing everyone. He just walked right by this huge line. They open the gate, the security, and he just walks right in. And I'm like, how is it that Jared Kushner gets to bypass security and walk in? He's not with the government. He doesn't have, as far as I know, Secret Service protection. I think Ivanka does, but maybe because he took his kid and that's the grandson of the president, maybe he has some special strings that he could pull, or maybe just James Dolan let him in, which is probably the bigger thing. Yeah. But it just goes to show you, I mean, these people live in a different world than everyone else. Mm-hmm. You know, they're in a bubble. And even though Trump had like virtually his entire cabinet was there. They were all glomming on. They were all getting in there, you know, all of them, the transportation secretary, Lutnick, you know, Duffy, the whole crew.
Who was the designated survivor back at the White House?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, Vance wasn't there because Trump doesn't really like hanging around Vance.
Yeah.
So he wasn't there, but virtually everybody else was there. Lee Zeldin was there. They were all checking out the game. And, you know, but Kushner is not an official part of the government. So, you know, but somehow, you know, Jared gets his way in there. Although apparently his private island in Albania, the people rose up and
they're thrilled about
that canceled, I guess.
I actually think that your description of Jared Kushner underestimates the amount of importance that the Trump administration puts on him. I actually think he is pretty much running foreign policy, because foreign policy is so intertwined with the business of, part. You know, the Trump organization and, you know, the kids and all the family business. You know, it appears that Kushner is sent on these diplomatic missions. He sets up a financial deal, an arrangement for some business operation, and then slips in some kind of diplomacy or arrangement, because that's how, you know, Trump claims he's won 7, 8, 9 wars now. It's all through this type of arrangement. It's all through tariffs. It's all through business deals. I think Kushner has all the clearance that he can get. I would say that we just don't know about it.
Yeah, it's just not official. But you're right. I mean, he along with Witkoff and Eric and Don Jr.
Yeah,
their role is right now is to travel the world, making business deals that enrich themselves and Trump, and to use U.S. foreign policy as their vehicle to do that. They're not making business deals that are completely separate from American policy. They're making deals that are completely intertwined with what the U.S. government does overseas. So that's the disgusting element of that.
And that plays into Trump not leaving the White House in 2028, in my opinion, because he is restructuring the U.S. government and U.S. policy to be part of the Trump organization.
Yeah, there's so much that has to be undone by the next Democratic president.
Right.
And all of these foreign policy entanglements should be at top of the list, near the top of the list as far as priorities that need to be undone. Yeah.
It is. I mean, this is why
government contracts, you know, that they have through various investment vehicles. I mean, what has to happen is Democrats have to take at least the House in the midterms. conduct thorough investigations, because we don't even know. We haven't even scratched the surface of what these people have going on. All we know is what the press has been able to uncover.
Yes.
We need them to thoroughly spend the next 2 years investigating. To me, I would like to see them make a complete list of everything that needs to be undone, including this, with subpoenas and investigations. So that way, when the next president does come, hopefully 2029, a Democrat, they will have this list ready to go from a Democratic Congress and can immediately undo a lot of this stuff. Because look, that's what Trump was ready to do when he took office with the Project 2025 people. He had a complete list and blueprint of everything that he was ready to do right away. And it was kind of overwhelming to Democrats who are just on their back foot because of the sheer volume of all of this. That's because they had a detailed plan ready to rock and roll day one as far as putting in all these things in place. Democrats need to have the same thing to undo it all.
Yeah. I really hope someone is keeping a list.
But I don't like this. I heard people calling it Project 2029 or something.
Yeah.
I hate that. No. Let's not use their label.
No, that is a stupid move, to say the very least. The election interference stuff, because obviously we've just had the primaries. There's been some very interesting results in the primaries. In California, Trump, obviously, I wrote a Substack about this too, the fact that I believe that Republicans are desperate to own California, as it's the fourth richest economy in the world, contains Silicon Valley. It's very valuable to them, and there were more votes for Trump in California than any other state, just by nature of the populace. Spencer Pratt was kind of his mayoral candidate, and this guy Steve Hilton was his governor candidate, who's a former Fox guy and British political advisor. We spoke about him a little bit last week. The race has been extremely tight. Steve Hilton now has crossed over the line, and so it's going to go up between him and Javier Becerra for the governor of California. But when it comes to the mayor, there was an interesting switch in the race where Nithya Raman, who was in third place, she was actually on the Weekend Show with me a couple of weeks ago, she then got to second place ahead of the reality TV show MAGA star Spencer Pratt. Trump calls it out as being a rigged election, doesn't understand why it takes 4 or 5 days to count the votes in California, because they actually count the votes, and has started the narrative that the election is completely rigged. And I think this, again, is proof of a plan to do this for the midterms in November. Let's take a quick look.
I'm not saying it's rigged. I'm saying it stinks to high heaven, and everybody knows that. Let's remove the appearance of impropriety. Let's have what a concept. Let's have votes on an election the day of the election. That's what many states are able to do. I think California is playing around with this.
But what evidence is there to prove that there was rigged?
Some of these efforts are so diabolical and so far upstream it is impossible to prove. But I think everybody knows instinctively something is wrong here. And that's a concern. We need people to believe in the integrity of our election system.
They're sowing the seeds, Ron.
Yeah, he says the Democrats are so diabolical, and some of these things are so far upstream. So he's saying like a very sophisticated, high-level conspiracy involving multiple powerful people. And they're so good at this diabolical scheme to rig elections that they're able to hide it and conceal it from everyone, that despite their best efforts, FBI investigations, court cases, subpoenas, audits, recounts, everything else, they have never been able to find any evidence that it's rigged, only because the Democrats are so sinister and diabolical and good at covering up their crimes. Leaving aside the fact that you would literally have to have tens of thousands of people involved in this conspiracy.
Right.
And you have nonpartisan election workers all over the United States who belong to both political parties, and not a single one of the over 90,000 election poll workers in the United States has ever come forward. Not one of the over 90,000 people has ever come forward and said that they saw something sinister or
No.
improper.
No.
And by the way, if the Democrats are this ingenious and this diabolical, why the hell did we lose the presidency, the Senate, the House, in lots of governor races and state legislature races if we're that good at rigging elections? You know, it's just there really was no distrust, no serious distrust prior to 2020 of United States elections.
Yeah.
It was only because Donald Trump lost and refused to admit that he lost that we are in this place. It is not anything that Democrats have done. That said, I would like to see California do a little bit better about counting their votes a little bit more efficiently and quickly, because it does take too long. And I think many Democrats in California have said that over the last couple.
Sure, there are a lot more people voting in
That
California.
doesn't mean there's cheating.
No,
You know?
exactly. But it is a vast state. It's the second largest state in the country. Trump has put the U.S. attorney, or his U.S. attorney, to investigate this. Let's take a look.
You say we have big questions about potential fraud in California.
We do have big questions about fraud in California. Let's just deal with the facts for a second. We do have election fraud. We charged a case just last month. I'm not sure if you covered it, but there was an individual who was caught on video paying homeless people in Skid Row to register to vote with false information. That's not a theory. That's not a suspicion. That is a case that we filed, and she has pled guilty to that. So that's a conviction. So we have multiple cases in that vein open on election fraud. Now, the question that, you ask, and many is it widespread? How much is it?
No.
Is it enough to sway an election? Well, the answer is we don't know. No, you can't say no. You haven't done an investigation. You don't know. No, you don't.
Oh,
you don't know because we have not been able to.
You haven't done an investigation.
We want to get the voter rolls.
You haven't.
Oh,
Mr.
we're
Asaley,
doing the investigation.
You are just that's different. So then you have not conducted an investigation. You are conducting one. So you don't know, and you are in the business of knowing. And right now you don't. You are pointing to one case, and you know what? You could point to a dozen. Do you know why? Because those are all the cases you've made in the last decade. A dozen individual cases.
I
None
did
at
not
scale.
say.
Half,
I did not say
half were
that
found
we
to be
have
lacking.
Found wide-scale fraud. There's two different things going on here.
Suggesting.
You're saying for sure you know. Hold on a second. You're saying for sure you know there isn't. I'm saying we don't know because we haven't been able to look at all the evidence at scale.
Yeah, but no.
Why is that? Let's talk about the voting system in California.
Mr. Asaley, if you were in a court of law right now, and I don't need your opinion on the system because you're not a voting system expert. You're a prosecutor. That's why I have you here. If we were in a court of law, and you said, Judge,
I was in the legislature. I was in the legislature on the election committee. I know a little bit about California's voting system. Yes.
So wait a minute. You want me to take somebody's experience in a state legislature for how long?
I was there. I was in the legislature for 3 years. I've been involved in election integrity long before that as an attorney. And we could talk about.
I've covered elections for 30 years, Mr. Asaley. 30 years. You know how many cases of widespread fraud I've covered? One. And it was the Trump administration.
All right.
I'm not a Chris Cuomo fan, but at least he did hold his feet to the fire there.
I'm not either. Yeah.
Yeah.
He did well there. Matter of fact, I think that was the first time I actually quoted Chris Cuomo in one of my columns ever. But yeah, it's so first of all, Asaley right there. He was nominated by Trump to be the U.S. attorney for Central California, but he couldn't get the votes. He even the Republican, this guy is such a political hack and just a Trump crony, unqualified, that he couldn't get the votes in the Senate to be confirmed from Republicans. So why is he still a federal? Because now Trump made him the first assistant. So he's not the actual U.S. attorney. He's the deputy because that position doesn't have to be confirmed by the Senate. So that's the only reason why he's even there. So he cites one case, and what he's talking about is not someone paying someone to vote. No, not that. It's that paying someone to register to vote. to sign them up, because there are some companies, there are political parties, there are PACs, there are groups that hire people to go, both parties, to go out and stand. We've all seen them in front of shopping malls and grocery stores trying to register people to vote or sign petitions, and they get paid to do that. And so one person in the state of California, I don't know how many millions of people, 30 million people or something, one person doing that job got caught registering people, paying people to register for their job, probably so they could look good to their employer or whatever. But there's not even any allegation that any of those people voted, just that they signed up to register. And that's all they got. So the new line from Republicans is, well, the federal government has tried to subpoena the voting rolls of Democratic states, and they refuse to turn them over. And that's the only reason why we can't catch them cheating. Well, the federal government has no legal basis, as many, many courts have ruled over and over again, including Trump-appointed judges. There's zero legal authority for the federal government to seize state voting rolls because states run elections. The federal government plays no role whatsoever. So, of course, these states are not, no state, including Republican states, will turn over voting data to the federal government. Then the reason why Republican states don't want to do it is because they don't want a Democratic administration trying to grab their voting data either.
Right.
So
should we not explain why Trump wants the voter rolls? Because as I see it, it's so that they can scrutinize them and purge names.
That's exactly right.
Because there are loopholes in voting law that, and this has happened in states and been widely exposed, where in southern states there might be, hundreds of names with the same surname, Johnson, and they claim that, well, that's the same person trying to vote multiple times, and they purge 300 Johnsons from the list. There's proof that this has gone on through a little loophole in state law, and I'm of the opinion, it's only rhetorical, that this would be the plan nationally, would be to seize voter rolls, to claim that there was all this fraud when clearly there isn't, to purge names and basically reduce the numbers of likely Democratic voters.
Yeah, they want to do a version of what Doge did,
right,
with Social Security rolls and everything else, declaring a bunch of people dead who weren't dead, and deleting them from the system. Yeah, if they get their hands on voter rolls, it would be a nightmare. And I oppose this. I opposed it when Democrats tried to pass some of these national voting laws, and I oppose it now. I will always oppose it. The federal government under our system for over 200 years has played zero role in the administration of elections. And once we go down that slippery slope, it will be doom. You cannot have the president of the United States controlling elections and how that they're run. That's not how our country is supposed to work.
We should run elections. Maybe the federal government should run elections. He did test the water with that a few months ago.
It is very, very dangerous. Yeah, very. And so these states are absolutely right to refuse to turn over their data to the federal government. And you see how the Republicans are weaponizing that, saying, well, we haven't been able to find any fraud, but it's only because Democrats won't give us their voter rolls. That's the only reason.
Right.
When that's preposterous. I mean, you can catch people cheating, but look, who is going to risk going to federal prison for 5 years so they can
people don't cheat in elections.
Tom Steyer. I mean, who's going to go to prison for Tom so they could vote for Tom Steyer, who, by the way, has now in his run for president and governor spent over $300 million for
Thank
nothing.
God it's his own money.
For nothing. Yeah, his own money.
Right.
If he'd
raised that money, it would
didn't even get one delegate when he ran for president. That's $330 million just vaporized. Unbelievable.
Yeah. I want to mention Trump's appearance on Meet the Press, because he went on and he pushed this narrative that California was cheating in the primaries. And Kirsten Walker push back and do you have any evidence of this? And, he does that thing where he doesn't really answer. There's evidence everywhere. There's loads of evidence. And she's like, well, where is the evidence? And then he kind of moves on. And of course, eventually he stormed off and trod on the microphone, which I thought was entirely offensive. This is clearly a diktat, isn't it? Because what we saw the Speaker of the House saying earlier is exactly what Trump was saying, that they must have faxed everybody. I don't know why I thought they would be using a fax machine, but with a list of things to say. They're all saying the same thing on Republican outlets about this cheating. So clearly there is a plan to sow doubt in people's minds, and the effect of that is that voter turnout gets affected and people just don't bother voting.
And look, LA County is what, 71% Democrat?
Yeah.
I mean, the idea that because a Republican didn't win the LA mayor's race, therefore it must have been rigged is completely preposterous. I mean, no Republican has won the governor or a Senate race in California in I want to say the early 90s. It's been that long. I mean, it's been a long, long time. So, but you see what they do here. They wait for these pretexts in order to accomplish their sinister motives. Like you had the shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
Yeah.
Trump literally 10 minutes later was using that as an excuse to get the taxpayers to pay for the ballroom.
Yeah.
And they knew that this California election was going to take a long time. They knew that their people always vote on election day, and usually they're doing better at the beginning until the mail-in ballots, which are usually heavily Democratic, are counted. So they knew exactly how this was going to play out, and they were using this. Why? What is the pretextual reason for yelling and screaming about voter fraud in California? To revive once again the SAVE Act, the pressure on John Thune to get the SAVE Act passed.
Right.
And that's exactly what they did. As soon as this stuff started happening in California, where the Democrats started surpassing the Republican candidates, they started yelling and screaming, this is why we have to pass the SAVE Act.
Yeah.
So everything they do is sort of calculated for a different purpose.
Yeah. Nothing to do with the fact that Spencer Pratt is probably the worst candidate for mayor in history.
Yeah, he's going to win. And he was out there for months saying that he was going to get over 50% and there wasn't even going to be a runoff.
Yeah.
That's what he was saying.
Yeah.
He was in he got 27% or something.
Yeah.
Which is basically the same amount of votes that Trump got in LA County.
We have to take a quick break, but I want to come back and talk about Pete Hegseth's appearance in Normandy for the D-Day commemorations, which have caused a kind of ricochet of emotions throughout Europe. We'll do that next here on Uncovered. When we first started this podcast, I honestly felt like I had to figure everything out entirely on my own. You suddenly have to wear a million hats, from writing scripts and setting up cameras to handling logos and tech. It gets super overwhelming, and that to-do list just completely overruns your life. When you're starting a business, you desperately need a tool that simplifies the chaos, and for millions of businesses, that partner is Shopify. Shopify is the powerhouse commerce platform behind 10% of all e-commerce in the US. What I love about it is that you don't need to be a tech genius. They have hundreds of ready-to-use templates, so you can build a beautiful online store that actually matches your brand's style. Plus, they have these incredible built-in AI tools that will literally write your product descriptions and enhance your photography for you. It completely tackles everything from inventory to payments to analytics, all in one single place, so you aren't constantly swapping between a dozen different websites. Start your business today with the industry's best business partner, Shopify, and start hearing... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/uncovered. Go to shopify.com/uncovered. That's shopify.com/uncovered. Let's talk about the morning routine. You've probably heard people buzzing about mushroom coffee or mud water lately. Honestly, I was super skeptical at first, but I've been drinking their original blend instead of my usual second cup of coffee, and it's genuinely changed my mornings. I used to get that midday caffeine crash and the total jittery anxiety spiral, but this gives me that warm, grounding morning ritual with none of the jitters. If you want to cut back on caffeine, Mud water is a coffee alternative made with organic ingredients, functional mushrooms, and adaptogens. It has about 1/7 of the caffeine of a regular cup of coffee, so you get sharp focus and sustained energy all day. I love the OG blend. It tastes like a spicy, healthy hot cocoa. And look, if you want to try it, the starter kit is the absolute best way to go. It comes with a full-size tin of your blend, a free rechargeable frother, free samples, and free shipping. Ready to make the switch to cleaner energy? Go to mudwater.com/uncovered right now and grab the starter kit. Make sure you use code UNCOVERED at checkout to get up to 43% off your order. Seriously, the free frother alone makes it worth it. That's up to 43% off with code UNCOVERED at mudwtr.com. Oh, and when you check out, they'll ask how you heard about them. Make sure to select our show so they know we sent you. Getting older changes the way you think about lots of things. I used to think life insurance was one of those I'll deal with it later kind of tasks, until I started hearing stories from friends who'd lost a parent unexpectedly and saw how stressful everything became for the family left behind. That really shifted my mindset, because life insurance isn't really about you. It's about helping you give the people you love some financial security if something unexpected happens. And honestly, I always assumed that getting coverage would be this huge process with appointments and paperwork and all that stuff, but Ethos makes getting life insurance fast and easy, 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and even get same-day coverage. There's no medical exam. You just answer a few simple health questions online. You can get up to $3 million in coverage, and some policies are as low as $30 a month. What I like is that it removes a lot of the friction that normally keeps people from getting this stuff done in the first place. Take 10 minutes to get covered today with life insurance through Ethos. Get your free quote at ethos.com/uncovered. That's ethos.com/uncovered. Application times may vary, rates may vary. Welcome back. I think we've got some new whooshes in the show, haven't we? That's rather cool. In the description below, you can find details of our sponsors, by the way. Please do check those out because they enable us to do this show. Okay, Ron, back to the pack. Normandy, D-Day commemorations, the events there, why the Trump regime sent Pete Hegeth. I mean, I understand he is the defense secretary who now likes to be called the Secretary of War, but this was a stain on the memory of all of those who served in the Second World War. It has, the stuff that he came out with was fascist, to say the very least. It is literally like he's on the side of Hitler whilst making these announcements on behalf of the United States of America in 2026. Have I got that about right?
Yeah, I've had an issue with him. Just everything is political. He's got this agenda. It's a crazy, far-right, weird Christian nationalist agenda. And he just can't stop. There's nothing. I follow him all over the place. I posted his latest workout video that he made from today in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, where he was cheating on his bench presses. And so, he puts out videos constantly. He has this team of people filming him everywhere he goes, getting off helicopters, getting on helicopters, getting off planes, getting on planes. It's the same thing that they do for Trump, where they film everything he does and they put out these hype videos. That's what Hegeth does. And no Secretary of Defense in the history of the United States has ever done anything like that. Because the job it's not about you. It's not about putting you in the spotlight as the secretary. It's about the troops. And how many times do you remember seeing the Secretary of Defense doing anything? It's very rare, other than like a press conference or something. So, but this guy every single day wants to be on TV, wants to be the star. So he's sent over to do the annual D-Day commemoration ceremony on June 6th, which is about the most non-controversial, non-political thing you could ever imagine. You're really just there. And every country that was involved, which was like 20-something countries, was involved in the Allied invasion. sends a representative there to usually give a little speech, and just the there's none of the veterans are still alive that participated in D-Day. I think they're all dead, but it's to pay tribute to them and talk about their sacrifice. Maybe you might talk about the fact that, fascism was defeated in the free world and all that, but Hegeth gets there and turns this into an anti-immigration speech, not for and for Europe, to tell Europe basically that you are not honoring the sacrifice. What he says, these troops defended liberty and freedom in Europe and liberated Europe from fascism, but the new fascism is migrants, and that is the new threat. And so you are dishonoring the D-Day veterans by allowing so many immigrants into your countries, that you are undoing what they did. And what they did was only temporary. What they accomplished was only temporary. And you are ruined. You are destroying your country. They're saying you are allowing your countries to be invaded by foreign powers and not doing anything to stop it. But in making the analogy, he basically made the migrants were the Nazis, or it was very, very confusing, the analogy that he drew. And it was just like, I know that the people in Europe, because I follow the European press in many, many countries, and they were just outraged by it. And they were just very upset, because that's not what this ceremony is supposed to be about. If you want to give a speech about European immigration, as, for example, J.D. Vance has done multiple times, Marco Rubio has done, that's fine. If you want to do that, if you want to meddle in their politics, but don't do it at the D-Day commemoration ceremony.
I am one of those European news people. And the thing that I think is missing from the American coverage of this, which is why there's been so little American coverage of this, and why it has had such deep, such a deep effect on Europeans, is generational trauma. And the generational trauma that goes with being a European and being on the receiving end of this war on your mainland for year after year. Everybody knows somebody, and Europe has not recovered from that. The way that Europe operates, the culture, the monuments, it is so ever present. And so to have this guy who is basically a former Weekend Fox host, far-right Christian nationalist, covered in Christian nationalist tattoos, who is as vain as they come, who is clearly somebody who's extremely bigoted. I don't think he's describing the immigrants as the Nazis. I think he is on the side of the Nazis. I think if you listen to the speech, and I'm going to play a bit in a moment, what he's describing is that he's telling Europeans that they need to be more like the Third Reich.
That's basically what he said.
Right? And that's the position that they should take. And that the invasion is the equivalent of Hitler segregating the Jews from the Germans. And this is imperative that we understand and read between the lines of what he's saying, because this word salad that he uses is not fooling anybody in Europe, because they've heard it before. So let's take a listen.
The men buried here fought in a warfighting alliance where every partner brought its full measure of industry, courage, and sacrifice. Not empty slogans, not lavish summits, not communiques. Real allies doing real things, taking real losses for a shared cause worth fighting and dying for. Each nation pulled its weight. Each nation bled. America will lead, and we must. But capable allies must be right there with us, shoulder to shoulder, in the breach, when it matters. In the years since these beaches, much of the West, in some places, in some quarters, and in some capitals, grew comfortable. We forgot that freedom is not free. We forgot that peace is not wished into being. It is bought with purpose, with honor, and with strength. The men who landed on these beaches knew this. The question we ask ourselves is, do we? It's past time we remember what they knew. Their legacy demands far more than quiet reflection. It requires our active vigilance. Sadly, today, different European beaches are stormed by different dangerous ideologies. Beaches in Spain, in Italy, in Greece, and Bulgaria. Boats and men arrive. When will European capitals do something about that invasion? Or is it too late? I pray not, and I believe not. The men who fought and died here restored freedom to Europe. That freedom must be maintained by this generation of leaders and warfighters, or what they fought for was merely temporary. As our great President Ronald Reagan once said, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. You don't pass it to the next generation in the bloodstream. It must be defended by each and every generation. We stand by our allies, and we expect our allies capable and ready to stand alongside us.
I mean, it's unbelievable that it's come to this, but it's also entirely predictable, because this movement that was born of Project 2025 and the Heritage Foundation and this far-right Christian nationalism, which is increasingly neo-Nazism. You know, J.D. Vance made that speech at the Munich Security Conference. Hegeth made that speech previously at the UN. You know, we've been warned that
Rubio in Hungary too.
Rubio in Hungary, right?
Similar speech, yeah.
This is their plan: is that they want to shift Europe to the far right. They have been successful in some ways and unsuccessful in others, but this is their plan. And whereas in 1939 through 1945, it was a different minority. This time, it's anybody who doesn't look like that.
And Elon Musk has turned, the Twitter platform into a nonstop.
Yeah,
he is almost the last several months almost exclusively focused on Europe and immigration.
Yes.
That's literally, if you look at his posts, it's 90% of his posts.
And the funding is there as well. I mean, they want to get Nigel Farage elected in England and make him the prime minister, again, the leader of the far-right Reform
although
Party.
They consider him like not extreme enough, but
right. But he, he was like in Nazi youth as a kid. He also hides his true feelings, and I think that you've got to remember these people are all public facing and on camera, and if we were a fly on the wall with them behind the scenes, we would be very, very scared. I just want to quote Simon Sharma, who is a very respected British historian and author, and he described the remarks that Hegeth made as a special kind of loathsomeness, a blend of historical deafness, grotesque stupidity, and comically ludicrous self-importance, as if the little people's rage against immigration somehow is superior to the war against the Third Reich and entitles this comic book nobody to lecture the actual heroes.
The two things have nothing to do with each other. There is no connection whatsoever between Europe's immigration policy and World War II and Nazi. There's nothing. And to try and link those two things, why? Because you're trying to use the occasion of D-Day and link that to their right-wing political anti-immigration agenda.
Yeah.
In some twisted, dark way.
Right.
And I think that's why, as you say, the people who lived through that experience were so offended by it. And by the way, the first part of that speech was an anti-NATO speech. So it was the first half of that.
Well, that's the other plan, isn't it?
Right, was complaining about European allies not doing enough, not standing with the United States. And, he's making allusions there to the Iran war and Europe not wanting to get involved. So that was the other part of it too, which is denigrating Europeans for not standing with Trump and then criticizing them for their own immigration policies, as if that's the business of the United States. What business is it of the United States who Spain chooses to admit to their country as an immigrant? The U.S. has no business whatsoever commenting on that.
We forget that a lot of this leads back to Russia, because Vladimir Putin is loving this stuff, sitting back and, seeing NATO being deconstructed, America throwing spanners into the works. And as much as Trump loves to deny it, there is, as I see it, a direct connection back to the Kremlin here, because, they do an awful lot of psyops on this stuff, and this is what they want.
Well, and that's also why they promoted Hungary so much, because they're anti-immigration. Even Poland, you hear from MAGA that quite a bit that holding up Poland as a model, because they are very restrictive on immigration as well. So that's what they do. They emphasize and they highlight certain countries to hold up as the ideal, although Poland is a very strong NATO proponent, they'll talk about the immigration aspect of it. So yeah, this is part of a broader agenda. Certainly not over. We see what's happening there in Belfast yesterday, which feeds into all of this stuff. They use isolated incidents of violence, and they're using it to just like it was used in the United States in the 2024 election. It's being used in Europe now.
Pete Hegseth has also upset the Mormons now as well. This is this is because that the Pentagon has reversed the policy that excludes, or he wants the Pentagon to reverse the policy that excludes Mormons from the Department of Defense's list of recognized Christian denominations. And this is all part of the same storyline of choosing which religions are legitimate as long as they align with Pete Hegseth and his tattoos. Let's take a look at Mike Lee.
I think it's very unfortunate that the Pentagon has chosen to identify basically every faith group in America that professes faith in Jesus Christ as Christian, with one exception. That is those belonging to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I find this offensive, not just because that happens to be my faith, but not just because it happens to be the faith of tens of thousands of U.S. military personnel, but it's also just repugnant to any sense of decency, any sense of our common heritage and our common belief that the government needs to not weigh in on doctrinal disputes between various religious denominations. And so I respectfully am imploring people at the Pentagon to reconsider this. Not just reconsider it, but undo it. Secretary Hegeth, tear down that wall. This is not cool. Get rid of it. Get rid of it now. Thank you.
Having his Ronald Reagan moment there. What's your take on this, Ron?
I mean, Mike Lee is as MAGA as you can get.
Yeah.
A Republican senator from Utah. He's as right wing as you want. Elon Musk pal. Big Trump supporter, was right there with Trump trying to overturn the 2020 election back on January 6th, was right in the middle of all that. And, for him to lay into Hegseth like that shows you how upset people in Utah were. Again, this is Hegseth who creates this major political firestorm and controversy, which had both senators from Utah screaming, Congress people, all Republican, from Utah screaming about it. You have obviously the huge Mormon population in Utah, but also in Nevada and Arizona,
right,
there are major Mormon populations. So why are you going to cause this firestorm for no reason? Well, for Hegseth and people like him, there is a big reason for it. They do not recognize the Mormon religion as a legitimate Christian religion. They view them as heretics, and they don't always say that out loud in public. And so, but they absolutely, there are millions of evangelicals who do not believe that the Mormon church is a legitimate Christian religion. And there are good doctrinal reasons for that. I mean, there are a lot of aspects of the Mormon religion that are in direct conflict with traditional establishment Christian teachings, very serious doctrinal differences. And, you know, I'm not interested in getting into all the differences, but for people like Hegeth, they take that stuff very seriously. So what he did was, in the Pentagon, the reason why they recognize certain religions, there is a policy reason. I know there are a lot of people in social media that question whether they should even have this policy, but they have a chaplain corps. It's there for a reason. It's to provide a lot of counseling. They do marriage counseling. They, do funerals, and they have to accommodate religious beliefs, people who want to go to services on Sunday. And so they have a designated list of like recognized religions that need to be accommodated. Hegeth felt that there were too many and a lot of very fringy religions that were included, wanted to pared down a list of like 31 denominations and excluded Mormons, specifically struck Mormons from the list. And that caused this major firestorm. So what ends up happening is Mike Lee puts out a tweet after that video was put out. That video was put out, I think, on Saturday. And after that happened, it was Sunday night, 12:30 in the morning, he puts out a tweet and says, I just got off the phone with Trump. He's going to reverse this policy and everything's going to be better. Literally. So you got Mike Lee talking to Trump at 12:30 in the morning on a Sunday to try and reverse some dumbass thing that Hegeth did, and which Hegeth did, by the way, within 24 hours of the D-Day speech.
Yeah.
So this guy is causing controversy all over the place. And, it's just over things that should not be controversial.
4 days earlier, Ron, he struck female and black Navy officers from a promotions list.
That he also did this week.
Right?
That's all in 1 week.
All in 1 week.
Yeah.
We need to make it absolutely clear, though, that Christian nationalism is not regular moderate Christianity.
Correct.
That Pete Hegeth is not the authority on which belief system is the right belief system.
Right.
And that Christian nationalism is militarized, and it's about injecting these chosen beliefs into government and into how the nation operates. It's extreme and it's unsavory, and whatever your faith system, and I would never for a second criticize anybody's belief system, even though I don't have one of my own. But Christian nationalism is extremely unhealthy in a nation that is supposed to be integrated and allow free choice when it comes to who you worship.
I think to me, like the most dangerous aspect of it, because look, I'm a Christian, I go to church, all that, my wife was the children's director for our church for decades. And so, it's you can be a Christian, obviously, and serve in government, active, and that can guide your more sense of morality or your sense of fair play or decency or whatever, how you treat people, whatever the case may be. But when you start injecting things in the Bible, religious doctrine into government policy, that's where I draw the line. And I think where most Americans draw the line, including the founding fathers drew the line.
Right.
They do not want that to be the case. So when you have Republicans in Congress like Ted Cruz and many others who say that we have to back Israel 100% of the time because the Bible tells us to do that.
Yeah.
That's where I draw the line.
Yeah. Talking of Ted Cruz, he is no fan of James Tallarico in Texas, is he? He's kind of arch rival. that we mentioned him, Tallarico, briefly earlier. I mean, they're really resorting to some very low blows to try and discredit James. Let's take a look.
And I got to say, the latter one particularly makes me laugh. I got to say, if you were making a list of 1,000 adjectives to describe this guy, masculine would not be one of them. I mean, this guy, if a stiff breeze came by, it would blow him over like a feather.
Yeah. I mean, I've interviewed Tallarico. In fact, the right-wing media has been clipping my interview with him from a couple of years ago and sharing it to try and discredit him because we were talking about climate change. There's an example of the weaponization of the media. Tallarico is more man.
I can see where you could bait some Democratic candidates into saying some very controversial things.
Thank you, I appreciate that. But Tallarico is way more man than Ted Cruz will ever be.
That's the funny thing. It's like they have this is clearly a strategy, because it's across the board. It's all the Republicans, including, the chair of the RNC, who's not a very masculine person himself, are all out there saying the same thing. So clearly this is the plan because they can't talk about the economy. They can't talk about peace in the Middle East. They can't talk about gas prices or grocery prices.
Inflation.
They really have nothing positive or good to sell. They can't talk about the national debt or the deficit. Literally, there's nothing that they have to sell. And so they have to go this route with Tallarico and Plattner, who they view as two of their biggest threats to being able to control the Senate. So they're going after each of them in personal ways, not policy ways. They're not attacking their policy positions on much of anything. No. They're going after who they are as individuals. And, there's a lot to work with Plattner that's legitimate, that he's admitted to, that you can go after him for. But the Tallarico stuff seems just utterly ludicrous and contrived. I mean, they tried to go after him with, he must be gay. That was the first line of attack, because they're saying they were saying like with Lindsey Graham, the fact that we never see him with a woman. He's never been married. He doesn't have a girlfriend around. So they started really going after him with suggesting he might be gay. And they're doing that as part of a calculus because it's Texas. So the way Republicans view it, you got to be a man's man to be elected in Texas. And, if you're not a macho man, that doesn't play in Texas. That might work in other states, but it's not going to work in Texas. And so what Tallarico does is he actually brings out his girlfriend, after a week of that, introduces her. And we learn that she is a very intelligent, sophisticated, beautiful woman. I think she's half Latina as well. And, it just took the wind out of their sails completely on that, and he basically explained, as did she, that she is a very private person, did not want the spotlight, does not want to do interviews, does not want to be used as a prop in this campaign, didn't want to be front and center. And that's why he didn't bring her to various events, specifically because she didn't want that. And so, so now they're going on this, he's a vegan. They tried that. And then it turns out, no, he wasn't a vegan. That was all a lie as well.
Yeah. He loves barbecue, he said. Yeah.
And Tallarico has come up with some great lines and great ways to counteract this stuff. But, for Ted Cruz of all people to come out and say Tallarico is not masculine enough. This is a guy who Donald Trump attacked his wife as being ugly. That's right. And literally Ted said nothing about it. All he did was cry and whine.
Yeah.
And literally 3 months later, he's phone banking and campaigning for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
If that's masculine, that's toxic masculinity. It's not masculine at all to not defend your wife.
Don't forget the running away to Cancun or wherever it was that he disappeared to that time, He's got form, put it that way.
If you're look at Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz and John Paxton are the paragons of masculine values and virtue.
Right. Then
if that's what you think, then vote for him by all means.
Yeah. Well, look, they're scared because Tallarico, and I said this to him when I first interviewed him, that he's presidential material going forward. I mean, he really does have all of those skills. He's also a man of God, and he has I think he's a pastor as well, part-time. I mean,
look, they don't feel threatened by people like Beto O'Rourke.
No,
because Beto O'Rourke is not going to change the South in his image.
Yes.
But people like Plattner and Talrico, they are afraid of because they have the ability to speak to the Republican base voter and connect with
truth
them
to power
in ways that other Democrats don't. Some other Democrats don't.
Yeah.
And that's why they go after them so hard and so personally.
Changing the subject, tell me about this story, because I don't know much about it, that with Jim Jordan and taking on the Southern Poverty Law Center, because this, I mean, on the surface of it, this is very interesting.
Okay, so, they came in promising to prosecute left-wing groups. Antifa, that was a big part of Project 20. They're going to shut down all these groups that supposedly pay protesters and organize things. So the Southern Poverty Law Center indictment was really like a Kash Patel special, where he is attempting to prove that they paid informants to penetrate right-wing extremist groups to go in there and inform on them, gather evidence about their extremist activities, which they would then turn over to various law enforcement authorities.
Yeah.
And so the indictment, which just happened, basically argues that they were trying to instigate, these informants were trying to instigate violence, trying to get right-wing groups to participate in violence in order to make them look bad, to discredit a lot of far-right groups.
Yeah.
That's basically the indictment. The indictment is total bullshit. It is complete nonsense. It is garbage. When they announced several of the things, when they announced the indictment, have since later proven not true, as Southern Poverty Law Center has come out and showed, provided proof. Like, for example, they claim that Todd Blanche said that they never took all of the evidence that they gathered and they never turned it over to any law enforcement agency, when in fact Southern Poverty Law Center has already released records showing that they specifically did, that they released it to the FBI specifically years ago, all the evidence that they had. So there is no criminal case here, but Jim Jordan, chair of the Judiciary Committee, wants to get involved, wants to get some publicity. So he decides to hold a hearing and bring in, who does he bring in? He brings in the CEO of the Southern Poverty Law Center.
Right.
That went absolutely nowhere because they're under criminal indictment. When you are indicted criminally, you don't have to talk about anything. So literally, like, his entire testimony was like, I'm under criminal indictment, I can't discuss that. And Jordan is trying to ask him about specific things in the indictment, and it's like, I can't talk about that. There's a criminal case going on right now. So that went nowhere. Then the other person that Jordan had there for the hearing was even more bizarre.
Yep.
He calls Althea King. Althea is the goddaughter. There are two of them that are Republican, and calls her to testify. And I'm like, why is she on the witness list? What connection does she have? The only thing I could come up with was the fact that her uncle, Martin Luther King Jr., worked closely with the Southern Poverty Law Center during the civil rights movement. And so is that why she's being called? And her testimony was just completely bizarre. She knew nothing about the Southern Poverty Law Center. She was referencing things that happened in the 60s. She had no knowledge whatsoever of the investigation or the case. And it appears that the only reason why Jordan brought her is because she's the only relative of Martin Luther King that is a Trump supporter. So that is why she was there, although she had nothing meaningful to add. So a classic Jim Jordan congressional hearing.
Let's take a look.
So do you pay the same people to do the bomb and then go and comfort the people from being bombed? You pay the same people to do both jobs? That's kind of fraud to me. That's weird and chaotic and confusing.
Well, Dr. King, I don't think there's any allegation that anybody who was working with the Southern Poverty Law Center bombed anyone. Do you have information to that effect? Because
I don't personally, but outside agitators did bomb our house in '63 and then ran back and took off the Ku Klux Klan sheets and put on police things and ran up in the yard.
Well, that's a statement.
Same people. It was crazy.
I'm with you, and that's a statement about the racism of that police force working with the Ku Klux Klan.
Hey, y'all pay both of them to do the double jobs. SPLC does. Really, you hire them to do the bombing, then you hire them to fix the bombing. That's weird.
Dr. King, you're asserting a lot of things under oath, and you haven't brought the evidence with you. So I think
I'll get some for you.
Okay, please, bring us the evidence, and I'll yield back to you, Mr. Church.
I'll get some for you.
Mr. Fair, did this?
Chaos wherever Jim Jordan goes.
I don't know if she's claiming that the Southern Poverty Law Center, which was closely aligned with Dr. King in '63, was paid the Ku Klux Klan to bomb her house in 1963. I'm not sure if she's saying that or if she's saying that what they're doing today is the functional equivalent of that back in the day of the police coordinating with the KKK. I'm not exactly sure, but as we see, she had no evidence. By the way, her Dr. King, that was, she has received an honorary doctorate. If you want to say that she's a doctor with the honorary degree, then fine.
Okay. Let's talk about screwworm for a moment. For those who don't know what it is, this is, I mean, I don't really know what it is. This is some infectious disease that kind of got out during the Biden era. Is that right?
Oh, no. The screwworm is a parasite for cattle and livestock.
Oh, well, there we go then.
Like that.
It's lucky that I'm not working.
This has been gone. This has been gone for like 50 years, eradicated, in the United States. It hasn't made an appearance here since the 1960s.
Well, it clearly never made it to England, which is why I missed it.
Yeah, it's South America. So
yeah.
But it's here. It's coming back. We've had, I think, now up to four instances where it was found in livestock, and it's a very serious threat at a time when beef prices are the highest they have ever been in the history of the United States. They are higher right now than they have ever been. You literally cannot afford to buy a steak anymore. I mean, I've completely changed my diet where I've gotten almost totally away from red meat just because it's so expensive right now compared to other proteins. And this is going to cause it to be even worse. It's a major problem. So whenever one of these crises happen, you always, and by the way, the reporting was that Doge, one of the programs that they cut when Musk took over, was the screwworm detection and eradication system. And that was cut by Elon Musk, eliminated.
Well, they did the same for Ebola as well, didn't they? So,
Right. So exactly. So in every way, I'm like, how are they going to blame this on Biden? How are they going to blame the screwworm on Joe Biden? Like, well, they can't blame this on him. They certainly have to accept responsibility for this now. Oh no, they found a way to blame Biden.
Let's take a look at Senator Roger Marshall.
I want to switch over because I know you're on the Senate Agriculture Committee, and beef prices are at an all-time high. There's new concern about the beef supply now with the discovery of that flesh-eating screwworm among cattle there in Texas. But what's being done to try to contain this new threat and really overall to keep these prices down?
Yeah, Charlotte, well, we got this. We've been through this before. We eradicated the screwworm in 1966, and we'll talk about this. But this is another thing we can thank Joe Biden for, that when millions of people came out of Central America, they brought this screwworm with them. It was on their pets, maybe on their flesh as well.
I mean,
it's absolutely false. There is zero. They're trying to blame migrants for screwworm now.
Right.
From like 2 years ago that they brought it. The lifespan of a screwworm, I looked this up, it's like 21 days. So whatever screwworms the migrants brought, if they brought them to the United States 2 years ago, we would have heard about this. We would have found them.
But this just plays into the
now.
immigration debate.
Now appearing in the United States right now.
Yeah, yeah. Brooke Rollins was asked similar questions. She's now the Ag Secretary, isn't she? Let's take a look.
He's eradicated it, pushed it all the way back past the Darien Gap into South America, where it was contained for decades, I guess almost 50, 60 years. I do think it's important to note that under the last administration, with the massive movement under the open borders policy, the cartels, et cetera, border security, that's when it began to make its way back up toward America, hitting Mexico in early 2023, moving its way up through Mexico in 2024. And when we walked in the door last year, I was sworn in on February 13th of 2025. They laid this all out for me, and I said, well, where are the sterile flies, right? I mean, we've beaten it before. We've got to beat it again, and obviously not much had been done to push back. So
So the other interesting thing is she admits there that she was briefed on this problem, potential future problem, back in February of 2025. That was before they cut the screwworm program. So literally after she was told that this is potentially a problem in the future, they cut the funding, they cut the program.
They knew
to try and prevent this stuff. I mean, these people are just ridiculous. And of course, everything is migrants' fault, right? Everything is Joe Biden's fault.
Yeah. Almost, and this is why this stuff needs to be exposed and why you're so good at this stuff, is because it exposes that the whole migration debate, not all of it, obviously, but a good amount of it is just ideological, and it's not actually to do with the reality of the logistics and everything else.
You had the HUD secretary yesterday testify before Congress that housing prices are high because of migrants.
Yeah.
Every problem in the country right now, everything is migrants and Joe Biden.
or Joe Biden. Yeah. This is the America that we're living now. I actually said in an interview a couple of days ago, I was like, can you believe how much the US has changed in 18 months? I mean, it really is unrecognizable to how it was at the end of Joe Biden's term. And that's not a political statement. That is just fact based on the policy changes. And as we alluded to earlier, I really hope people are keeping tabs on all of the desecration, the destruction, the deconstruction that has gone on. Because putting it back takes much longer than tearing it down. And that's my worry about why I think this period is generational, is because it's no easy feat to put things back in place. And USAID, I think people, again, just don't really understand the impact that is having on the world and the US by nature of its removal.
I think that it goes back to what Trump said, which Trump said, which is, when he came into office in 2017, I think he really didn't expect to win.
No.
I think that he was doing it for publicity or promote his businesses, whatever. I don't think he realistically thought he was going to win. So when he did win, he really didn't know what to do at that point. He had no specific agenda other than build the wall, and that didn't even happen.
Yeah,
he surrounded himself with a lot of old establishment Republican type people, and just kind of muddled his way through until COVID happened, and then all hell broke loose. And I think that what he said is this time was going to be different, that he was going to have a vast, detailed agenda to transform the United States government. He spent 4 years, not himself personally, but Project 2025, Heritage, Stephen Miller, all of them spent 4 years crafting that plan, and they implemented it. And that is why what you said is true, that there has been this dramatic transformation, is because they sort of learned from the first go round, and they were determined not to let anything stand in their way. And the transformation is not just government. It's look at Washington, D.C. is being, the White House itself, the ground. I mean, the monument, everything is being radically transformed.
Right. And the saddest part of the story, there was a survey done yesterday. I think 14 European nations were asked. You may have seen this. And they were being asked about the U.S. as a reliable ally. And most of the responses were like, nope, not anymore.
Yeah,
and for me, that's the saddest part of this.
I mean, I've been telling them that for 18 months now. You You can't count on the United States until these people are gone.
We have to finish, but I'm grateful always for your expertise and your friendship. We'll come back next Wednesday with another Uncovered. Download the audio podcast that drops later tonight. Check out our sponsors in the description below, and we'll see you next Wednesday. Thanks a lot, Ron.
Next week. All right.